And there we have Simon Jackson. Simon, so let me introduce you. So Simon is lead technical architect at the DXC technology. And he is actually one of, I'm not sure if it's one of the first Xbox MVPs, but you are still
one of many. One of many.
One of many. Now, there are not so many Xbox MVPs, actually. The first thing which comes into my mind is that you're playing the whole day games or something.
I wish. No. Unfortunately, work kind of rules that out.
Yeah, but you're also one of the makers of the mixed reality toolkit, and I'm not the MRTK, but the Xrtk.
Oh, both.
Yeah.
You have to know, I wrote the original MRTK as it's the second generation of the MRTK. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. So to give people an idea, I think most people do know already, but what do you do in the community?
Oh, what don't I do? I'm usually out there doing things, working with logics with different companies and different things, all in my spare time, because obviously my day job is my day job, so I have to find my fun somewhere else. It's always good fun. Again, it's interesting watching the last talk because obviously I work in healthcare too, so it's always fun, but just not for this. This is all communities. It's all about the developers and all about getting things out there and the tools in people's hands to use. So, yeah.
I agree totally. So you're going to do a session. How do you see the future? No, sorry, that's another step. That's the other session. So you're going to do wise building. Yeah, it was a good one.
So it's still the future. I take it.
So you're doing wise building for cross-platform mixed reality so hard.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and so that's actually where the Xrtk is meant to be for. So you're going to show us some things, I presume?
Yeah, just talk about the state of the play of things and just get on with the world. So.
Okay. So can you share your screen?
Just doing that now.
Yeah.
There we go.
And our lovely Sjoukje is helping us with all the video. Thanks, Sjoukje. And Simon, be my guest, and you can start.
Right. Okay. Nice. Everyone's online in the lovely worldwide world as it is, and are locked in spaces as we can. So obviously we're trying to reach out and get beyond. For those who don't know me, which seems to be a rapidly diminishing number, I'm Simon Darkside Jackson, or Simon Darkside J if you're looking at find me anywhere else. I work progressively in my spare time for the community, building different projects, working with different engines, different things out there, most of which I end up not being able to talk about because they're all under NDA or working for different things. Other ones, I think, working like the Cystic Fibrosis Trust on working with solutions to help improve treatments, or working with Microsoft, or then branching out with the Xrtk to actually bring XR development out to the masses in the easiest and quickest way possible. So obviously, as we stand with XR today, or mixed reality, as I prefer to call it. So XR is sort of a coined term in mixed reality. We're supposed to encompass AR, VR, MR, everything. Is when we look at all the different devices, everything that's out there, we have a hugely fragmented estate. Each provider's having their own little SDKs, their own little frameworks. Ironically, I learned actually just quite recently the amount of different XR headsets that are out there at the moment. They're actually using the same Snapdragon processors and the same hardware underneath, but they're still all writing their own little custom things going forward to how you actually then interact with them. It'd be interesting to see how, with the provision of the XR2 chipset, and how that's sort of been rolled out on devices where we can see more of a compartmentalization of that. But from my sources and the vendors we speak to with the Xrtk, no. Everyone still has to build their own different way to have their own little distinctive way of doing things. We saw a little bit of fragmentation in there. The same too then when you're trying to publish all these things is the fact that there's now multiple stores and each have their own different certification requirements or license requirements, and also different ways to interact with those things, so that then when we're building projects, we're not just building for one system, we are building for many, which is usually a lot harder. And across all of these is that there's no one way to talk to a device. So events and interactions are either translated to different data types, or they use different methods or streams to be able to actually get data, especially when it comes to spatial data, or as the new technology goes, well, hands tracking, which is the best one. And ultimately what we're left with is that we have to make a choice. We can either make a VR solution or we can make an AR solution. It's extremely hard with a lot of these devices how to actually have a combined one where we want a desktop only mode or non-desktop only mode, or have pass-through or not, because we won't know what the device is until it's run on. And the way that a lot of these platforms work, there's no discovery, or there's no APIs to tell you uniformly across them what things are. So when we look at trying to address some of these problems, and this was started the original MRTK, and so the whole refreshed design from the old Holo Toolkit, and where we focused with Microsoft on the HoloLens 2 and building out the best platform there, which had extensibility. And then we broke forward for what was the Xrtk. We had several key things we had to try and address. Is that one, developers don't have to make 7 different projects to be able to assess all the different platforms and things they want. They want to build it once. You don't spend any creativity in your time focusing on your content and building your content out for all these different platforms. We wanted to make sure the fact that if extra features were on devices, they would just simply light up. I didn't have to hack my project apart to turn things on, turn things off based upon what they would do. And also trying to find a way to have one way to talk about input. So whether hands are in the system or not, we just one way to talk about hands. We don't have to change things or have various different ways. Same with pointers, same with interactions and any kind of definitely input in the system. But also with a key now, the fact that we don't want to close, but we don't want to close or black box in the system. We want it extensible. We want to be able to expand it. So beyond any kind of framework or toolkit, we want to be able to use those same features to then expand it beyond. But ultimately, it has to be all about the devices, so that when we're building one device, we can target as many platforms as possible. Certainly, one of the things, the advantage of certainly being with the Xrtk sort of separate from Microsoft, is that the vendor relationships are a lot simpler. So we talk with Lenovo, we talk with Steam, we talk with Ultraleap and other manufacturers out there of when we're building these systems, and we can work with them a lot tighter, free from any kind of licensing bounds, and sort of work with them and more. A lot of this potentially could work with the MRTK, but it's been designed with the Xrtk in mind, with the sort of the branching path it's taken. So what do we mean by the Xrtk? So the Xrtk itself is a fully open source, anyone can contribute, anyone can have a voice on building out this whole mixed reality platform. It has several capabilities, and it's always has been designed to be rock solid. It was interesting. I had a discussion today with one developer around our sort of version strategy. So even though the Xrtk is currently 0.2 release, some go, oh, well, it's not production ready. But what that means from the Xrtk perspective is that we built our 0.1 result, which is our foundation level of this is how we define the Xrtk. The 0.2 release basically hardened that, and then basically worked more with expanding vendor support and then having key systems in place. So basically means that foundation now is almost locked. We don't see any real change there too. So then we can actually start doing then further enhancements that start to build on top of that. Now, when we're working with the community or working with developers or working with organizations, obviously we're trying to address quite a wide target audience in here. But the Xrtk is then geared up into 3 different focused areas that we're trying to address. So we've got the beginners, where they want just drag and drop, plug it in, have it running, and not really have to do much coding. So that's obviously one of the goals with the Xrtk. Some bits are there, but ultimately that is, I think, will be our 0.3 release, where we really go to town on our UI UX system, which is going to be quite interesting, to say the least. There's also then sort of the immediate level developers who want to be able to take the framework out of the box, start quickly extending it and expanding it, and then building on top of that to actually then enhance their solutions. And still keeping in mind for those advanced users who have their own way of doing things. So they want to be able to take a system out and replace it with their own. And because of the framework and the architecture the Xrtk is designed on, it means this is very easily. All we have is an interface to say, this is how an input system works. This is how boundary system works. This is how spatial understanding or hands works. As long as you write to the same interface, then you can quickly replace or swap out any huge parts of the Xrtk if you so wish. I mean, we prefer use what we've got, but hey ho. So some of the key features which we've talked about over the years when we're talking about the Xrtk, it has one big unified input system, which is all centered around Unity's event system. And this has evolved over time to make sure the fact that it's as hardened and as performed as it can be. There's been a lot of work and improvements, especially the 0.2 release, to ensure the fact that we've got the maximum throughput in there. We have an extensible services frame architecture. So everything in an Xrtk is what we class as a service. So when we have input running, it's running in its own separate layer. When we have controllers, they're running in their own separate layer. Same with networking, boundary, spatial, almost any other services there. And that's only what we've built. Developers can actually go and write their own and simply tell the platform, here, go run this, and it will run it for you. We've also paid heavy words with how we abstract all the different hardware platforms, and especially with the hand release, which has been done by Dino of late. This is very much true there, because with all different vendors we've worked with, working on what makes hands, how they're defined, how they're jointed, how they're positioned, how joints are rotated, and making sure the fact that we have a system that works through across everything and easily translates between how those different platforms work and what they do. And this is seen as across the platform, so we can turn on certain things and not turn them off based upon what the capabilities are of that platform. One of the things that we're looking really forward to for our next point release is our extensive UI and SDK system. Now, this may be very different to what you see from a lot of the frameworks and the way they work, in the fact that UI or UX is a thing in its own right, which will be standalone from the actual Xrtk. And then the Xrtk will provide integration with that UI to be able to then provide the buffer across the two to actually link them together. That way, it means that all your fidelity or your interaction or animations, your state animations, they're almost unaware of what the system does. They're simply there working in the system, and Xrtk will integrate with those in a more architected way. So it's very exciting as we're coming forward. And obviously, our vendor support keeps on growing. I think we're about 12 vendors we're talking to now. There's still a few more which we're in conversations with, what we're doing with them. Some of those vendor relationships are quite deep. Some of them are quite light, and different ways of whether they are building those integrations or whether we're working in cooperation or building them for them. There's several, unfortunately, you can't see my desk. There are several devices on here which I actually legally can't show you because they're hidden. Some of them are not. And some are still waiting because, unfortunately, COVID happened and those devices now couldn't be shipped for whatever reason. But they will be making their way very soon. So I guess a lot of you have been watching the tweets and comments from all the team members and see what we're doing. And you occasionally will let something slip out and what's there. But yeah, and much, much more. The Xrtk is a very wide-ranging system, and the end is far in sight. But the key part from there is that for what is there, it is rock solid, almost production-level quality. And it's been rapidly tested by a lot of quite big names in the industry. When we look at the architecture and what we mean by this, there's a nice little diagram. As a picture tells 1,000 words. Is that the Xrtk is broken up a bit like the MRTK into several different specific layers, and all with their specific roles and responsibilities and what they're meant to do in the actual project. So we've got the presentation layer, where is everything you've seen as scene, all the scene objects, everything else in there, and how those all work. And this is separated by the actual toolkit itself. So from that point, all the UX is in your scene, but the toolkit isn't. all the services, framework, and things like that, all actually handled internally within Unity, within a whole C# framework. And by that, we actually save about an 8% cost saving reason for putting things in a scene, because the toolkit does all the management of that. That's a huge subject for another day. We're not going to get through in 40 minutes. Behind that, then we have individual distinct systems, each with their own definition, their each own interfaces, which describe how that system works, and then one or more concrete implementations of those services. So where we might have one boundary system which works for about 3 platforms, as one platform might be completely different, still using the same interfaces, but has its own implementation and just being separate. And because of the platform system that's built into the Xrtk, we can easily say, well, this service only runs whether it's on Oculus in the editor or on Windows. If it's on any other platform, it doesn't run. And then we split different services for those. Or we can actually have mock services which only run when they're in the editor, to save time and money when you're actually working with some potentially cost-effective back-end services. Underneath that, then we actually talk to the actual platforms. And in all cases, we're looking at the native implementations. We're not necessarily relying on something that Unity provides. We're talking direct to the vendor and actually getting the data from their device and how that works. So we get the raw data through, which has, again, another slight performance saving, because we're talking straight to the source where this data comes from. This comes especially keen for some of the platforms which the way you interact with them is very specific, and if you have to go kind of additional translation on that, it can get messy. But in each of these cases, every platform has a definition which basically says, how do I identify this platform, so it knows whether it's active or not, what the capabilities are and how those capabilities are serviced, and also what are the properties and definitions of those services, those models, to actually then provide the data to the running service in the system. And when we say this is extensible, we build these systems. Developers can build their own systems as well and simply just plug them in. All they have to do is simply comply with what is on the right-hand side of this document, which is all the defined definitions, interfaces, definitions of what the toolkit's made of. As a quick demo, as I can't do XR within the system, there's a nice little recorded video, which will walk through. And as in with most of my demos when I'm running systems, there's nothing out of the box. It's a case of I'm simply going to start Unity and create a brand new project, and then sort of import the toolkit in. And for sanity's sake, I've cut out already all of the Unity gubbins for waiting 3 weeks to make a coffee while your project starts to stand up. So we got a brand new project. We're going to start it up, and then Unity instantly starts because my machine's that fast. When we're going to install the Xrtk, it's a simple case of we've got 2 methods. Because we're all based on the Unity package manager system, we can either manually edit the Unity's manifest and type in where the Xrtk is coming from and also where the source. To find this, we're simply going onto the Xrtk site, look in the latest release, and then the information of what you need to paste in is there. So we just copy that, paste it in, and then Unity will then initially load the core part of the framework. The other method we have is we actually also provide a little Unity asset, which is a little shortcut cheat way if you don't want to edit any files. So you just take this asset file, import it, and then it will do all the hard work for you to then basically register the Xrtk and then start importing the actual core project. So we're going to go in and import that asset. Yeah, it's going to load up a default package. Anything in this package actually doesn't remain in your project once it's finished. It's actually removed because all we're doing is putting it in there, running it, getting it off. And then from there, you'll see the fact the Xrtk is then installed by default. We can go into the package manager and actually look to actually install the additional components of the Xrtk. In the way that the Xrtk is laid out is that every single platform is its own project. So you take as many or as few of those projects as you want. It does matter. The Xrtk will simply dynamically react to a new platform being registered, and then it will instantly be made available in the configuration for the system. So here I've simply imported the Oculus and Windows Mixed Reality platforms. It's actually quite scary how many platforms we've got there at the moment, but hey-ho. When we get a new scene, we simply configure that scene, and this will add in the toolkit itself, which is the one and only entry point the toolkit has in the scene. And it will also add what we call our camera rig, which is basically what we call the mixed reality play space. In there, made up of the camera that you're going to be able to see, some UI raycast interaction to do with how the UI system works, and also the key player's body. Now, a key note here is that the play space should always remain at the origin of the scene. So if you need to move things, move the scene, leave the play space alone. Now, when we look to configure the Xrtk, everything is done through configuration. And we simply select the toolkit or one of the configuration files, and then we can start actually configuring it in situ. Anything in here is actually saved in its own little asset file. So if you want to have several configurations, you can, and then just swap and change them in and out as you wish. In here, we're simply going into the input settings, looking at all the different controllers or data providers that we have provided. I'm turning off those ones I'm not using, which makes it simpler when I'm running this in the editor, and then leaving in just the Oculus configuration and also the Windows Mixed Reality configuration. We have some little handy tools in here, which are just little silly things from our app. I had to put something in there to put a floor in, because when I was testing the Xrtk, every single time I had to reload the project, I had to go and create a floor. So I simply created a nice little thing, just go and create a floor. So in this there, we got our floor in. All I'm going to do is add a simple cube, place it in the scene above the floor level, and then arrange it so that it is in view of the camera when it starts. So if I look in the play space and look at the camera, I can see it's actually going the other view, so I can put my object I'm going to view elsewhere. This is not critical, but it means I can see it when I start the project. I'm going to add to this one of the basic components that we actually inherited when we separated from the MRTK, which is called the manipulation handler. This has several changes done to it, and then we simply define in this handler now how you want to grab it, how you want to select it, how you want to move it. This is sort of in the precursor vision for how the beginners or the hackathon way it works, is that you'll add components, you'll configure them, and then that'll be it. So in here, I'm simply going to select it, and then I'm going to simply then build a project and run it. For all of the actual elements in the scene you want to interact with, you all must have physics elements, so like the box colliders, to be able to actually then interact with them. Now, if we go down to the project settings, we make sure the fact that our XR settings are set correctly. This is still using Unity's old XR system, but as we move forward into 2019 or 4 and 2020, things will slightly change based upon what Unity will do. But always the Xrtk will still be working natively with those providers and just using what we need to in Unity to make it work. Now, as the first test, I've got my Oculus Quest and I've got it plugged into my USB port. So I'm actually using the Oculus Link. This is extremely useful, especially when testing Oculus. It means I don't have to keep building for Android every 5 seconds to actually run the scene. And here I simply put the headset on, and what you're seeing here is in the editor is what I'm seeing actually in the Oculus device. Now, this is not using any Unity drivers or things like that. This is actually using Unity's own DLLs and connection logic for doing it. Now, one of the advantages we have in this, you see that I've now just added basic interaction. I picked up a cube, put it down. Not that exciting, but out of the box, we also get teleportation, we get pointers, we get some default controllers which can change, and also now thanks to Dino, we've also got hands implementations built into it. You know, you have to do 0 to have those things work. I've got another video that shows a bit more about the hands implementation, but also from a testing perspective, having those hands in the editor for testing is extremely invaluable, and it's hugely time saving. Now, obviously, that's done on the Windows standalone. Just we're testing Oculus. We can also then switch to doing a build just to prove it still works, and it's exactly the same. So here I've got my actual scene in there. I'm just going to build it. I'm going to run it. And as this will be, I can guarantee you the fastest build you're ever likely to get out of a Unity project. I mean, almost instantaneous. It's just fantastic improvements we made. So I'm going to build, put it in a folder, and for some reason I put it in the recognized convoluted folder system. And I'm going to build it, and then we're simply going to run that project on the machine instantly. Run it, and this is the same thing you've just saw in the editor. Again, still using the Oculus Link, still using the Oculus headset, and using the Oculus native drivers, and effectively getting the same result as we have in our runtime project. One of the things we tried to keep to is that I keep a synergy between what you have as your editor experience and what you have as your runtime experience. So again, this again cuts down on the whole test cycle between what you need to do. If it runs in the editor, it is going to run on the platform. That's one of the guarantees we kind of make to make sure that it will work. But also it's very useful if you actually have mocking elements, the fact that you can actually have services talk to the external data providers. When it's done in a build, it gets real data from the backend service. If it's done in the editor, it swaps it out with mock data, depending on how you want to build your service and how it runs. Now, one platform on its own is not great, because obviously the whole aim here is the fact that we want to be able to build and run for any platform. So with zero change, other than just basically changing the platform, making sure that the XR settings are set for that platform. Yep, they're enabled, good. And then again, running it, and you should get exactly the same experience. So here we are making sure the fact that all the content we're building is truly cross-platform. It works everywhere as it should do. Hopefully no jitter is coming on that video feed coming through. But there, so it's exactly the same experience with zero code change. And that will be true of any platform that Xrtk supports. Is one promise we always give, is the fact that if you want to support a new platform, then all you simply do is just add the package, make sure the configuration's there, and that's it. You know, you should trust the fact that the Xrtk will make that work. If we're looking at the hands implementation, this is a great one that Zeno put through. Is he did a nice little demo scene for how hands work. They say it includes from like Unity UI buttons, some physics style buttons, some pose recognition from how the scene works, some basic grabbing logic, where we actually just go and grab far objects and grab them, hold them around, put them down. But again, this is just a simple demo scene that Dino put together to test out all the features. And we run this again effectively on every platform we support with hands. So that's from Oculus to HoloLens 2 to Magic Leap. And he's currently working on the Ultra Leap implementation, which we're doing some work with the guys at North Star. One of the nice things as well is that we actually got two different fidelities for hand physics. So where you can either have, we basically call the low quality level, where they're just simply bounding spheres around the objects, but tightly mapped so you can actually see them. But then even down to joint level or fine detail physics, where individual joints and things are good. And it's actually impressive that when you hold these kind of balls in the scene, they actually do feel like they're in your hands, just because of the level of physics that are used. But obviously, you make sure the fact that you're using the quality of data that you need for the project you got. You know, low fidelity is enough for the most scenarios. High fidelity is good for those really fine-grained areas, and making sure the fact that you enable each in each scenario. So that's me wabbling on about for a good while on the Xrtk. If you want to know more, then basically you can find us on all these fantastic places on the web. They're going to our GitHub page, our main website, or simply contact us. Or what we really like you to do is basically come and join us on the Discord and start chatting about things. And in you'll see all the different platforms, see all the different conversations going on. Also seeing some of the development roadmaps and things we're doing and going forward. Or if you want to get more personal, you can actually reach out to the 3 core contributors. Although we do have a growing developer community coming forward, with lots of people adding on different things and different discussions. Most of which you'll see. Occasionally we'll have conversations which you don't, but eventually we will always share that information. So that was me. That's Simon Darkside Jackson, and you can find me wherever you wish. I can take a drink now. I can pause.
Just a question.
Thank you so much, Simon. That was a really interesting talk. Does it lead to? Sorry, Simon.
No, it's good to do that again. It's interesting. Just you have a head down on these things, and it's good to come back up for air and just talk about it rather than just focusing on all these different components.
Yeah. So, but you have the Xrtk, and then you have the MRTK, and they're both called the Mixed Reality Toolkit. Does that lead to confusion sometimes?
Ironically, no. I've not really had anyone who's like confusions about it. Microsoft have badged them effectively their Microsoft Mixed Reality Toolkit. It's what they guide people for their HoloLens 2 development. I believe they just recently sort of deprecated the old add-on for the Quest, and now they've had sort of native Quest support and things like that. But ultimately, it's all about the HoloLens, and that's where its primary focus is. Where the Xrtk has a much more broader scope, and we talk with more vendors, more people to get more devices on. Nice when we can get devices and they just send them to us. Other times we have to buy them and work with them to get things done. But it's a funny old world. My head spins sometimes with some of the vendors we speak to. So it's just fun.
Cool. And the XR. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say half my job is vendor management at times. It's like I don't get to code. I'm working with the vendors to get things done. So it's fun.
So, but the Xrtk diverged from the MRTK in 2018-19, right? So from MRTK 1.
Early 19, late 18, early 19. That was made with a change in focus of how Microsoft wanted to take the MRTK. So, and mine and Stephen's vision for the Xrtk was always going to be a lot wider than just the HoloLens. So, we wanted to get out to everyone and also make sure the fact that it was a fully open source project and open to everyone realistically. But I think there were also some philosophical differences in the way that we wanted to finish the Xrtk. But Microsoft have done a standard job on what they have. They've got a great UX library they've focused on. But it's the difference between when you've got like 80 to 90 people working on a project and 2, or now 3, thanks to Dino joining on from the core, and our growing community developers we keep adding things as we go forward. I think once we've got this next release out, we start to focus on the 0.3. So the foundation's done. It's sort of rock solid now. I think we'll see a rapid acceleration of things that will get added into the project and brought over.
Cool.
Everyone keeps saying I would come over if it had buttons. So yes, we'll have buttons. Everyone wants buttons.
If I'm a developer and I have a project that's already MRTK 1 or 2, and I want to move over to the Xrtk, is that possible? Or do you have to? Would you recommend doing that, or would you then rather just start from scratch? What's the better way?
It's almost like the Holotoken and going to the MRTK originally. Yes, it's possible. The
so start
core
from
foundation.
Sorry.
We kept a lot of the naming and things and how they work the same. Yes, you're going to have to regenerate configuration. The configuration of the MRTK will not work for the Xrtk because of the path they've taken. Our configuration now is a lot more granular. So we generate rebuilding configuration, but that's a one-time activity, and it's a case of beyond the default. It's just a case of tick, 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 done. Most of the things will just work out of the box, so you don't have to worry about it. As regards to your scene elements, if you've written for like the event system or how events work in the MRTK, they should just work because it's the same Unity event system for passing things around. So it's just a case of just balancing, and where there's conflicts, let us know, and we'll either work on a path to actually migrate that or give you advice about how better to do it.
And is it easier from starting from MRTK 1 or from MRTK 2?
If you, I think even the MRTK says if you've done something in the Holo Toolkit, put it in the bin. Use it as a proof of concept. That's a nice idea. The path from Holo Toolkit to anything beyond, and that's probably because the architecture changed.
I actually have
the whole Holo Toolkit was locked. Go on, Alex.
With regards to this, do you guys have a public roadmap for the Xrtk?
That is probably something we should keep doing. It is sort of talked about on the Discord. It is sort of advertised on the front page. There is a vendor roadmap, but there's not a feature roadmap. So yes, thank you for calling me out on that. It's something I should focus on, but with our heads down with the foundation, because we want the foundation to be rock solid and basically be production ready as it stands. I mean, the Xrtk is used in certain companies as actual enterprise products, but we can never talk about them because they're all internal. And there's the daft running joke we had the last time our dev days, is that the first 2 mixed reality projects that went onto the Microsoft Store were done with the Xrtk, but before the MRTK was released. I won't go into that. But it is actively used in a lot of places, and a lot of research projects that we work with and are getting done. But we just can't tell anyone about them, which is a real shame, because it's like, look, but it's all good fun.
Cool.
So
we have
yeah.
Sorry.
So yes, I should get onto that public roadmap properly now. That I think once we got this out, then we'll put it up there, because it'll be a good start.
I wanted to say we have some questions from the audience.
Oh, that'd be good.
Joost is asking, is the service system essentially identical to the services from MRTK2?
So from an architectural standpoint, yes. From an implementation standpoint, no, because what you'll find is that the services within the Xrtk are a lot more refined, and especially when we look at platforms. So we spent a good 4 months building an actual proper platform system, which is a way for knowing when a platform is active and when it's not, which in some cases it's very, very difficult to actually know, is a platform really there and can I work with it? And around that, then putting those implementations in, it is very, very similar, you know. And I think Stephen is currently actually writing a document which is publishing very soon, which is actually on that very same subject about how to build a service and how to do it. I think the only thing we don't have, which I did like about the MRTK, and we might do, is they had a little service generator. But to be honest, it's a case of you write an interface, you write an implementation, you write some config, and you put it in. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. And then behind that, the power you have in there, because of the platform system, the way the platform system works is you can have things light up or turn off or light on whenever you want it to do, with very little resistance, especially when it comes to like one of the things we've highlighted recently about like doing mocking services. So if you want something to fake the implementation just for testing and running, it's just configuration. It's just okay, right, well, run my mock service instead of my real service at these times, and it makes life a lot simpler.
Cool. Nice. There's another, that's not really a question, but does the Xrtk have a piano?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why do we not have a piano?
No, but we do have a box tab. You saw.
No, we want to have the piano.
A piano is nice, but
if you want to overrule, you create a synthesizer, for example.
I can say one of the projects we worked with, which was for a music studio, is that they want to be able to connect wires into different parts of a synth and then play stuff. Well, you're not playing with it; you're picking stuff and plugging it in. But ultimately, it's just a large array of buttons which play different sounds. So I'll make a xylophone. We'll do a hands-on place with a xylophone so you can whack out the tunes and then have it work, or just point at them. There we go. We'll go xylophone, not piano.
Cool. Alexander, any questions from your side?
I actually had a question, which was more. I actually got a question also from the question about the public roadmap was actually from Ward, the previous speaker. He actually had a second question, was will you work also on the shapes?
Yeah, this is actually one of the few areas where we do have a good synergy with the MRTK around the shaders. So we've kept sync with the two frameworks, and we obviously contribute or work sometimes with issues across the two. So it does use by default what was the original the MRTK standard shader. but we have had some suppliers or vendors who work with you who want to do certain different implementations, certain different things. So yes, I think it's the simple answer. We will do a lot more with shaders. I think the only variance that we had as feedback from quite a few people is that whereas the standard shader is great and it's this huge behemoth that does everything, a lot of devs would actually like something that does little bits or have things where you can add things up rather than just have one big thing, which we'll certainly look at in the sort of future releases.
Yeah, the question I had myself, but you already talked about a few times about it, is I can imagine that it is really challenging to keep Xrtk up to date with regards to MRTK. And I'm just curious, you already mentioned parts of it, but what do you think the biggest challenge is? How do you work closely with the team behind the MRTK at the moment, or yeah?
Not as close as we used to be, but we're certainly always on their GitHub channel and watching issues and taking the biggest part, which is the feedback from the community of what they're trying to do, and then addressing that in a more Xrtk approach. We look at some of the fixes and the way they do, or compare issues, and where we found sort of core problems, we've actually submitted PRs or issues back to the MRTK. Because obviously we want the MRTK to succeed because, you know, well, I built it, so I want it to succeed. Because it is its foundation is, you know, a fantastic framework. And any benefit that goes into the MRTK is only then going to benefit the Xrtk for the wider community and for anyone who needs to have more than just HoloLens.
Yeah, Roland came back on the xylophone. Only except that if you add tracking of real sticks to hit it with. I agree.
Well, you say that. One of the things we do support sort of internally are the Vive index controllers, and they're fantastic things for just whacking around. So yeah, you could put big sticks on those and actually have a real xylophone next to a fake xylophone and whacking it out. Oh, it's just Roland to throw that at me. See, look,
yeah.
it's caused me to blur out.
Yeah, you're blurred out. Not sure why. I think we're gonna finish up so it's not another. Oh yeah, you're back again. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's it. It's xylophones. You mentioned xylophones. I blur out.
There are not really more questions. So let's round it up. We still have the XR community zone who's open at the moment. We actually finished really on time because you guys both kept way below the 40 minutes, which is good.
Oh, I've just got something else to talk about right now.
It can be done. No.
Ketchup, ketchup. I'll have ketchup talk.
No worries. So thanks again, Simon, for joining us and having some insights about the Xrtk. And I presume I will see you in the XR community zone.
Oh, you know, I'll be there. I love AltSpace. The amount of talks I've done in AltSpace too, so it's good for me.
That's true. That is true. You want to close them up, Saskia?
Yes. So thank you so much, Simon and Bart, two really, really cool talks, I think, today again. And I hope I see you and everybody who's watching in AltSpace in a couple of minutes.
All right.
See you next time. Bye-bye.